When you ask this question, how should I prepare for the PMP exam? The usual response is take a course, read PMBOK guide, read class notes, and take sample tests. Does it really give you a roadmap that you can follow? If not, then how do you prepare for the PMP exam and what to do to be ready for the exam in a relatively shorter period? I am going to share with you a method that has worked for me in my exams and for many others who have followed it. Interestingly, I recently found out that there is extensive research that supports this method. Okay, so the first step is to do a reading. Do you have class notes? Great, read them. If not, then read the PMBOK and the Agile guides. Now, if you find parts of those two guides boring, then just browse through those portions and focus more on the ones that you find interesting. Your objective is to make a connection between what you are reading and what you already know. You are coming in with project management experience, so make a connection between the experience and what you just read. For example, you have done risk management in your last project. As part of identifying risks, you reviewed the project management plan, including the project scope statement. So what you did was documentation review. Now, while reading through the PMBOK guide, identify risk process, you find that there are other techniques that can be used to identify risks. One of those techniques is interview stakeholders. Now, you do remember that you spoke with a couple of stakeholders when you were identifying risks in your last project. What you have just done is you have made a connection between your experience and what you just learned. And this is what you are going to do throughout your reading. Keep making those connections between what you already know and what you are reading. You will learn a lot in your first reading. Remember, your objective is to get familiar with the content, not to master it at this time. Now, once you have completed a chapter or a module, you are going to write down the key points that you remember. And the connections you made are very helpful now because you can recall through those connections what you just learned. Now it's time to move to the second step. You are going to take a full-length sample test, the whole 180 questions test. Let's call it test number 1. Once you complete the test, do not look at the answers. Do not see which questions you got right and which ones you got wrong, and definitely do not read the explanations. Say you got 30 out of 180 questions correct. Let's just keep this information on the side because you are going to move to the next step, which is to reread the material, your class notes, the PMBOK and Agile guide, and any other reference material. So as you go through the second reading, you will start to recall several concepts that were there in the sample test. Now you may not remember the exact questions, which is good, but you will start to make connection between what was tested and what you're reading at this time. This is also the time where you start creating flashcards. If you have those already, that's great because you're going to use them in your reading. As you complete different chapters, different sections, start asking yourself questions, asking questions that come typically with a why at the start. For example, you just finished the risk management module. Ask yourself a question. Why is scope baseline an input to the identify risks process? Can you answer this question? If not, then go back and read that part of the PMBOK guide where it addresses scope baseline as an input to the identify risks process. Or ask this question, when does free float occur in a network diagram? Can you answer this question? These are the type of questions that will help you to connect what you already know and what you are learning at this time. This is why I say that study groups are very helpful. Once you have completed the test the second time, check the total score, but do not check the answers. Do not look at which questions you got right and which ones you got wrong. I can guarantee you that your score has improved. One reason, of course, is that you are familiar with the questions, but the main reason is that you have used the connections you have made earlier to answer the questions. At this stage, you will have a good idea of which concepts or which modules you are still weak at. And that is what you're going to focus on as you move to your third reading. Research has shown that when we take tests that cover all the concepts or all the topics, the result is amazingly better in terms of learning compared to reading a chapter and then taking a test only on that chapter at the end. Why? Because it gives you a false feeling of learning. You have not made the connections that are required in order to fully comprehend the whole subject. So one effective technique here is to space out your learning. If you read on day 1, take the test on day 2 and read on day 3 and take the test again on day 4. Repeating or reviewing the material by spacing it out over multiple days or multiple weeks is much more effective than cramming it together on the same day or within a couple of days. If you are a visual person, you should definitely draw to make those connections that we have been talking about, or start writing points as you go through the reading. There are two benefits of that. One is that when you write something, it starts to register again. And second is that you will make those connections stronger that you are building between what you already know and what you are learning. For example, after reading about Scrum, you can take a paper and write down the 5 events, 3 roles, and 3 artifacts. And then ask yourself questions. What is sprint planning, which is an event? This way you are going to continue to build the connections that you have already made. Once you have gone through that, it's time to take the test one the third time. This time when you complete the test, check the answers, check what you got right, which ones you got wrong, and also read the explanations. This time your objective is to understand why you are still getting various questions wrong, though you have done at least 2 or maybe 3 readings by this time. Then go back and read on those areas only, those concepts that you are still getting wrong. Then start with the new test, test number 2, and start repeating the whole process again. You will see your scores improve rapidly as you go through these test taking iterations. So I hope this was helpful. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and press the thumbs up so others can benefit from it. Bye for now.